Today is a good day to be angry. Why? Because we forget genocide. And our discussion today is going to start with the Armenian genocide. But it's important because it carries on today. Now, the Armenian genocide started in the 1890s when Sultan Amir Abdul II started to worry about his leadership, about his ability to control the people of the Ottoman Empire. And he basically started from 1894 to 1896 just going into Armenian cities and government sanction killing large portions of the population. In certain instances, there were single days where thousands of people died, unarmed, children, women, and men. And they had no right to die. But if you fast forward to today, the Turkish government's covering up of this is something that is very difficult for us to stomach. And oftentimes we don't even remember that this happened. I was talking to some of my friends, and they are not even aware of this. I wasn't until I read this book. But this is the series of events that led up to World War I and the US against Turkey and the Young Turks, turning into the US being for the Young Turks, all while ignoring the genocide that took place for the Armenians. And there's going to be a lot of discussion that I try to go into, but there's so much more to this story, and there's so much more to all the stories that follow, because we're going to talk about Ukraine, we're going to talk about the Uyghurs in China, and then US interventionism. So I will try to make this digestible, but this will not be the last time that we talk about it. This human rights is so unreasonably important to our survival and to our livelihoods. And if we ignore it, we will have problems for the rest of our lives. So talk about the Armenian genocide. Throughout this period, you had the fall of the Ottoman Empire happening, and there were Christian missionaries coming over from the US to what is modern-day Turkey and modern-day Armenia, and trying to convert people to Christianity. The Armenians were Christian for the most part already, but the Turks were not. And in order to basically perform an ethnic cleansing and to rally the empire around one idea, they created. Okay, look, this video is long and it's complicated, and what we're discussing is some of the darkest stuff that humans can do. And throughout this video, I'm trying to stitch together what is effectively anger after reading a book and just learning about things that will really break you down. But I want to show this video to you, even though it's kind of raw and kind of unput together, and I'm doing my best to hold on to all the facts that I've read about, because the anger matters. If we can't get angry for something that is unjust, then we can't change it. Because just hearing about something and being sad or just trying to care doesn't change the world. It doesn't change the way things are. Being affected and then being upset because you're affected and then doing something about being upset, that's what's going to make the difference. So keep that in mind. Try to hear what I have to say, and I know it's not the best put together argument you're going to hear, but it's the start of a really important conversation. So thanks for watching. They created a common enemy. That enemy was anyone who is not an Ottoman Turk. And this eventually did lead to the empire falling apart, and the Young Turks revolted, and they created a new government, which was even more nationalistic. And in the course of pretty much 3 years, from 1915 to 1917 or 1918, when World War II effectively ended, or World War I effectively ended, 1.5 million Armenians were killed. And that was half to 2/3 of the entire Armenian population on Earth. Okay? This is important. And some of this is too dark to talk about, but I'll give it my best because it's so unbelievably important. So, when it turned to the Turks killing the Armenians, it was declared jihad, which is a holy war. And this is not something terribly unlike what we saw in the Crusades, when Christians declared holy war and tried to reclaim parts of the former Holy Land. But it rallied people around this idea of anyone who's not Turkish is not human, does not deserve to live. And in the years following and the years during this genocide, the Turkish government was very, very adamant that the Armenians revolted. They had to put down the Armenians and deport them for the sake of securing their nation. They had to deport them, and they made it civil. They made sure that they were well fed. But the reality of the situation, from an academic perspective, is much, much, much darker. It involves these people being told that they need to leave for their own safety, and then being put on trains in what becomes a prototype for the Holocaust, where they're shipped out of their cities and then forced to walk for days unfed and without water, and then are beaten to death or played murder games with, where pregnant women have their stomachs cut open and their fetuses removed. These people did not stop at anything to kill Armenians. And it's not unlike other events on Earth. And that's why we should be angry. Because something that we're going to continue to see, we already have seen, is an abundance of mass shootings in the US. And all of these events are connected. I'm going to try and do my best to explain it, because the thing with reading a book like this, with constantly reading the news, is that we're all a little bit enraged, and we either become desensitized or we do something about it. But there's no in between, because to be sad and to just allow it to sink in means that this continues to go on. And there's a quote: first they came for the socialists, and I didn't care because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't care because I wasn't in a trade union. Then they came for the Jews, and I did nothing because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And the American people have played this interesting role in foreign politics pretty much since the inception of America. We keep going into other countries and saying, hey, this is how you should run your government. We did it in Egypt. We did it in Panama. We did it in parts of the Ottoman Empire, and we did it in Afghanistan. And it keeps happening. But something you'll notice is that the US tends to have a stake in these areas. And that's not to say that we shouldn't care about foreign politics, because in diplomacy comes economic agreements that benefit nations. But if we only prioritize them and we ignore the fact that people die and that countries commit atrocities, and that one of those countries is the United States, then we can't improve. And again, I'm trying to keep this down to earth. It is a very dark topic. And most of the time, if we hear about these things, we hear 6 million people died from COVID. 6 million is a number none of us can wrap our heads around. But if you want a frame of reference, that's how many Jews died in the Holocaust. These numbers don't mean anything to us. And a lot of the time, we hide behind the numbers. There's this many people who die from abuse. The leading cause of death for pregnant women is murder. These are the leading diseases that kill people in America. But they're all just words. It does matter that we feel something when we hear these words. And that's something that I've talked to other people about, and it's almost like they don't care, because these are things that just happen. Mass shootings keep happening. And we're halfway through the year 2022. I'm sure one day we'll all be looking back on this video, because it is important, and it is another part of a very ongoing discussion about how we deal with death and the causes of it. And mass murders in the first half of this year are 223. That's more than the number of days that have passed. And a mass murder, in this case, is defined as one that has 4 or more people die. So, isn't that a little bit unsettling? And just this week, we had the shooting in Uvalde in a school. We had a racial killing in Buffalo, New York. And then in Tulsa, we had a shooting in a hospital. Shouldn't we be a little bit upset about this? Shouldn't we care that our fellow Americans, and more importantly, our fellow humans, are dying? So the reason I bring this up is because it's the start of the modern discussion on genocide. The Romans committed genocide in Carthage, and that was not the first time, that was not the last time. People in empires, especially when power structures are falling, step in and they remove a body of people that disagree with them or that are a threat, or they can rally people behind a common enemy. And that's something that we saw in the US against Mexico. Recently, in the last 10 years, the US pits itself against a nation that is just a nation full of people. Just like the rest of Europe, just like the Arab world, just like Eastern Asia. These are all just people. But the US is quick to make an enemy out of someone that does not agree with their point of view. And I'm going to have to edit this video so much because it doesn't make sense. Try and explain. I'll try and walk through it again. So the Armenian Genocide takes place in the 1890s. There's some US support for going and helping the Armenians. The Armenians are brutally murdered. They are taken far from their homes, made to walk and starve, and then are killed. But first, they are frequently tortured. 2/3 of Armenians die in this. That's 1.5 million people. Then we fast forward to World War II, and Hitler literally comments on how the Armenians went missing and no one cared. And in between these two eras, you went from the US creating a tribunal to try the Turkish people, the Turkish leadership for war crimes, all the way to the US saying, let's ignore Armenia, and every time they mention it thereafter, we're going to exclude the word Turkey, we're going to exclude the word genocide from talking about what happened to the Armenians. How can you talk about dead people if you don't talk about the causes? Especially when the causes are human. And so, when the US was running low on oil during this era, the US turned to working with Turkey. And one of the things that happens is that a documentary is supposed to be created by MGM that discusses what happened in the Armenian Genocide. And that movie was a shit show to begin with. But because of pressure from the Turkish government that would make trade deals with the US poor, the US forced the movie to not be finished being made. So when we're talking about freedom of speech in the modern day, it's an interesting issue because we'll let other nations silence us, but not our own. And it shouldn't be that anyone's silenced. But if we let hate speech speak for itself, or we let the truth speak for itself, we'll find that we rally either for or against it pretty easily. So then comes Ukraine, in modern day, where the US and many other nations have avoided poking Russia because it has nuclear weapons. And that's no surprise, and that's not necessarily unfair. But recently, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that 20% of Ukraine has fallen to Russia. And Russia created an unprovoked attack on the Ukrainians. And they used very similar justification to the Turks during the Armenian genocide, where they said these people were a threat to national security. Russia said that Ukrainians were Nazis that were anti-Russia, and then launched an attack. And every time they talk about the story, it's different. But it is ultimately for the wholesale destruction of these people. And so the US is giving supplies to the Ukrainians. The US gave some supplies to the Armenians, but they were humanitarian aids. And it's just this repeat story of the US not stepping in to stop mass horrors, to stop rapings and killings and destruction, but stopping in to make sure that we make a quick buck. Think of all the times in the last 15 years that green policy has been ignored, that we keep talking about, oh, but American cars are the lifeblood of American society. And we don't want trains because trains are socialist, because they pave ground that more people use, and then we don't have the freedom to take our cars where we want them. I mean, there's so many tangent points that are connected to this issue of calling something American, calling something not, that we forget that these are all economic issues and the bigger issues are humanitarian. These millions of people die every year from air pollution. And one of the biggest causes of air pollution is greenhouse gases. And so we're just going in circles. We're avoiding policies, and that's the same thing that's happening with gun rights right now. Guns are not toys. There are plenty of things that you can collect. You can collect model trains. You can collect clothing. You can collect postage stamps. You don't need to collect firearms. You can go hunting. You can own a pistol for self-defense. Why do you need automatic weapons? You don't. Because there's not many things you can use them for other than killing. And you can take them and you can have fun and you can shoot targets. But the idea is we keep dangerous items out of the hands of dangerous people. And not everyone who owns one is dangerous. But if you want to prevent things from happening, you need to take some austere measures. We don't let liquids on planes, but we let machine guns in the hands of people. In some states, you don't even need any sort of training to be able to own these guns, just for concealed carry. So it's just like we're missing the point, right? Genocide is a prescriptor. It is something that happens when we rally around nationalism too hard, when we look at other people, other humans as the enemy, instead of looking at changes that we can make, like cooperation, like infrastructure, like agreements to uplift these people. And so we have another instance, which is the Uyghurs in China. And we also have things in the meantime, like genocides in Cambodia, the Philippines, in Rwanda. I mean, this is not new to planet Earth. We just keep ignoring it because it's easier to sleep at night. So when people say, do your research, this is one of those things we do our research on. And if you want a really comprehensive understanding of life in the last 20 years, you need to be looking at something like events over the last 200 years. How did we get to where we are today? And another tenet of this is slavery, because we have not done anything about it. The US has actively put an effort to make, I even had this in high school, to have our textbooks not reflect that it was a major issue. The horrible treatment of African Americans in the early US. And not even that early, because we're talking as recent as the 1960s. Like, our grandparents were adults during this time. And we were having Martin Luther King be assassinated. We're having race riots. And ironically, right after the Armenian genocide, we had a wave of nationalism, of xenophobia, and that was one of the major restrictions on immigration. And we had race riots. It's like history keeps repeating itself. I'm sure that's something we've all heard, but this is a good example of it. So with the Uyghurs in China, this is a primarily Muslim population who is literally being exterminated. And the US is not necessarily powerless, but it is a difficult circumstance. We do face serious economic issues because the US is not self-sufficient. We rely heavily on other nations for trade. And if we want to keep living that Amazon lifestyle using all those cheap goods from China and cheap labor from China, we need good relationships with them. However, that does not excuse these actions. And if our goal as the American people is to decide what is good for us and for others, then the goal of the American government and its role should be to figure out how to enact it. Americans should be behind the preservation of life, regardless of when and where and whose it is, because if you don't save them, there will be no one there to save you. Furthermore, because these are human lives, right? No one said that anyone's religion is correct. And if you were to say that Christians are right, and we know that they're right, then how do you explain the difference between Mormonism and Catholicism and Protestantism and Anglicanism? Every one of those people believes something completely different. How can Christians be right if Christians don't agree? And the same is true for Muslims and Jews and Hindus. Point is, there's no right religion. No one knows enough to say. But it's never justification to exclude people, because we owe to all humans the preservation of human life. We're humans. It could have been your child, it could have been your parent, it could have been your sibling, it could have been your friend that died in a massacre, that died in a random shooting, that died in a car accident, that died from suicide. And every one of these issues gets closer and closer to home. And I think the final point I'll try to make, because there's just so much here, and another one that I didn't mention is the Native Americans, and that the US kept pushing and pushing and pushing them. And as colonists came to the New World, in quotation, which was not new because it was occupied, it resulted in the deaths of millions of people. And it just keeps happening over and over and over again. And the US keeps saying, oh, we'll give the Native Americans territory. And then they push them away. And right now, it should come as no surprise that when you're robbed of your land and your heritage and your culture, you fall into depression. And that the group, the race, the highest incident of alcoholism is Native Americans. Go figure. America's kind of screwed them, wouldn't you say? So that closing point. It's about what we do now. It's about recognizing that these are issues, recognizing that we need to take a step. Because if we take no steps and we spend forever debating where the first step is, we will never take one, but everyone else will. China doesn't wait for the US to agree with their policy in order for them to keep killing Uyghurs. Russia doesn't wait for the US to decide on policy for it to keep on killing Ukrainians. We've all seen the news. We understand what's at stake. We can debate minutiae and details when there's a time and a place for it, when we've made enough progress that the details matter. But right now what matters is doing literally anything. So support legislation that actually does something about Ukraine. Find people who will run for senator and who will run for president, who will actually be interventionist in a humanitarian way. Because at the end, we're all people, and society and governments and religions are built around that fact. And if we can't do something to protect other humans, then we have nothing left of society. So use democracy to not just further your ability to live well, because it's not like all of us are living well anyways. How many of us wish we had more money, are not getting paid enough, or working overtime, are going into debt because of medical issues, are unable to pay off student loans and student debt, are unable to find good jobs, are unable to care for our families, are unable to know what to do in a crisis. These are all connected. Society is built around people, and we either work for them or we work against them. So use policies to work for them. This might be enough for now, but it's not the end of the discussion. It's human rights, are the most important thing we have on this planet. And if we can't defend them, if we can't defend ourselves, the human race, then there's nothing left. So remember those words. Today is a good day to be angry. And when they came for me, there was no one to save my name.